So now we're going to look at the architectural styles that were and are in Scandinavia. And most people, when you say Scandinavia, most people think of Vikings. That obviously are dudes on snowmobiles with the helmet. Yeah, the Vikings obviously inhabited that part of the world, and they did have an influence on the architecture that was built there. And so when we're talking about um, Scandinavia, we're talking about Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and Iceland. And Iceland's not on here, it's over here off the coast to the where all this is. And so that consists of Scandinavia. And the reason that they are kind of treated as a collective is that they do have similarities in their styles of architecture. Um, I have been to all of these countries except Iceland, and I will tell you that the traditional architecture is very similar. The commercial architecture is a little different, but residential is very similar. So we're going to look at them as a collective. The land of the fjords, and again, I've got my thing off, so there we go. And a fjord just means it's um, oh, it has escaped me. Glacier. Lots of seals. And I always thought this was interesting because it's the land of the midnight sun. And look at this. At Finland's northernmost point, the sun does not set for 73 days during the summer. And then you have the opposite in the winter when you don't see the sun hardly at all. I want to experience it just once. I want to go live there for a year just to experience it, to see what it's like. Because I just wonder if, you just don't sleep for 73 days. I have been when I was, let's see, I'm trying to think, when was I in Finland? It was September. So it was not far off. I remember having blackout shades. They had blackout shades on the hostel where I stayed, and you had to pull down the blackout shades. Of course, the aurora borealis is part of the phenomenon that they have that takes place there. And I included this if you guys want to hear what one sounds like. I've I've not experienced one yet. It's on my bucket list. Okay, so for the people who live in Scandinavia, they live in different. They live with different functions, right? You can live in the city, and as most city dwellers, they tend to live in apartments rather than houses, just because of the scarcity of land. A lot of the architecture there just very very simple. No matter where you go, right? Um, city. This is very very clean, very simple. Bright colors, but still very simple. These people live on island. There are a lot of islands in Scandinavian region, in the Nordic part of the world, and a lot of them live on the island like this. And you could see a lot of beautiful color to help balance out what I'm sure must have been very difficult winter. It must be a very difficult winter. I was there towards the end of summer, and it's very different. But I can imagine why you would do this in the winter to keep from getting really really depressed. Hopefully keep them from depressed. And a lot of them worked on farms, lived on farms, and so the buildings were very functional. So when you look at Scandinavian architecture, you're going to see that it's very functional. It is truly form follows function. They get a lot of snow, so the roofs are very steep. You're going to see fireplaces everywhere to keep warm. Wood is abundant, so you see a lot of wood that is either stained or covered over with stucco. They don't really obviously, get hurricanes or anything like that that would prevent them from using the local materials. A traditional Scandinavian kitchen, the big wood burning stove with the large hood to let the heat escape. Without this to escape, you would fill the room with smoke. This is before we had traditional fireplaces or for us traditional fireplaces. Our fireplaces now are televisions. But back then they would, use this to set fire in the kitchen, literally. And remember, we saw that back in the beginning. We used to build fires on the floors in Ireland. We saw that, right, in Great Britain, on the floor in the kitchen. And so they were still doing it. They just set it up so that the smoke could go out of the house. Oh, come on, mouse. It likes to mess with me when I'm trying to move on. You'll see a lot of houses that had thatched roofs um, in the winter. Obviously, that goes dormant, same as the as it does outside. But it's just really terrific for keeping that cold snow that's on the roof from seeping into the house, right? Because when you live somewhere that it snows 5,000 feet, and I know I'm being hyperbolic, but if you have a foot of snow up there for days at a time, it will drop the temperature inside your house. And so putting that big buffer, that big barrier of grass up there helps insulate between the snow and the inside of the house. Okay, so when you start to look at modern, right? So that was all traditional. When you start to look at modern Scandinavian design, it is just like before, minimalistic. So if there is a word you would use to describe Scandinavian residential buildings, it is minimalistic, functional, and that has not changed. They did not flee from their past. They just updated the technology, and the style evolved with the technology. And in fact, they have contributed greatly to the universal style that now the world now has embraced with their minimalism. Just glass and a roof. Now, obviously, you can do this now with glass in Scandinavia because we've insulated glass, but in the past, you saw they had very small windows and very few openings because this lets in the cold. Still have steep roofs, and then here where they don't, grass. So the Scandinavian countries contributed greatly to mid-century modern, which was a universal style that Europe, United States embraced, the world embraced. I was in Brazil, and they still have a lot of architecture down there that is still mid-century modern. They still are mid-century modern, and it's now making a comeback. So this is the mid-century, and it started in the late 1940s and went to the mid-70s. And you can see this is the style, and the tulip chair by the Eames brothers, who were, I believe, from Norway, Denmark. But we also have other Scandinavian architects who came to New York to design, and they brought with them their style. More modern. This is where it kind of is now, right? So the Scandinavian design is very well known for furniture. If you talk about Scandinavian design, furniture is a big part of the design. A lot of mid-century style designs. These are all current, but they're mid-century modern in flavor. Very functional, minimal, and one very noticeable factor about Scandinavian design is they almost always have some element. Here it's the carpet, here it's the artwork, here it's the chandelier, here it's the chair, here it's the table. That is the focal point. It is a big element that is the focal point. And then everything else just supports it. Tends to be a little more neutral palette, grays, beiges, warm tones. Same here, right? So this is very minimal, very clean. The pops of color are the blue. Personally, it's obviously monochromatic. Personally, I don't know that I don't know. I think it's too much for me. I would have done a different color chair and different color shades, even if it was, because this is exact. And I get it, I like it, But I don't know. I would have liked to have seen that chair be a different color at the very least, like a yellow or something, as they did here, right? So everything is the same. You got this big, beautiful pattern, and then you get these little pops of color, and that is very key to not only mid-century but to Scandinavian design. So essentially, the architecture in Scandinavia by function was minimalistic. It is also very much wood based because they have a lot of wood. Wood is their main natural resource. And their modern style is really not broken away very much from their traditional style, other than it's evolved technologically. Very beautiful part of the world. If you ever decide you're going to go backpack across Europe, go stop by. We didn't stay very long because it was very expensive. But, some of the most beautiful country I've ever seen. Okay, so we'll stop here. Hope you enjoyed your visit.